Hello and welcome back to this tutorial. In this video, we are going to be working with encapsulation properly. And what is encapsulation? Encapsulation is the concept in Python object-oriented programming that allows you to hide your data, just like we have already done in our previous video, as private or protected class attributes. And then you use functions called getters and setters to access it outside of the function and also to modify it outside of the function. Okay, so we created this car class in our previous video, and we were able to change all of our class attributes and instance attributes to private attributes and to protected attributes. Okay, so now we said that when the attribute is protected, you can access it and modify it outside of the function, right? But when it is private, you cannot access it or modify it outside of the function. So, but as a Python programmer, whenever you see that an attribute is protected, you are not supposed to access it from outside of the function. So for now, I'm going to play with that a little bit just to refresh your memory. So if you want to change this class attribute here, number of wheels, to protected, you just give it one underscore. And if I want to print this, so remember that we are returning number of wheels here. Okay, so I'm going to change that to one underscore so that it won't throw error. So now we are printing the value of number of wheels directly as a protected class. So if I print it, it is going to give me 4. So the number of wheels is 4, right? Now, if I modify it back to private, right? And I want to access it as a private class, so I'm going to change this also to private so that it won't throw error. And I try to access it. Now it throws error, like it throws the error that we are expecting, that this attribute does not even exist at all. Okay, now I'm going to clear the terminal, and I will also try to reassign it as protected. So now I'm changing it back to protected, and this also back to protected. So I am going to say that the value of car dot number of wheels, so car1 dot number of wheels, so, and I'm going to change the value to maybe 10. So remember we had 4 before. So now it is protected, not private. So, and I want to print it here. And also from this getter function, I'm also returning the protected number of wheels. So we can see now that everything has been updated to 10. But if for any reason I change it back to private, so I'm changing everything back to private, and I try to reassign it, this will not work. Okay, so I'm going to change everything back to private. So none of this will work. So value of number of wheels has gone back to the original one that we have here. So this reassignment is not working. Now, what are getters and setters? So now, getters and setters are functions that can help you access these attributes that are private or protected from outside of the class, or to modify them from outside of the class. Now, this description method that we created, when we created it originally, we called it description. But then I changed it to get description because it is actually a getter function. And what it is doing is that it is giving us back the value of these attributes, right? And it is returning all of them for us. And whenever we want to print it from outside of the class, it will be able to provide us with all of them, right? So if you don't use a getter function, you can get a protected attribute, but you cannot get a private attribute outside of the class, right? Now, so assuming I want to get only one attribute, I can just modify this to get just that one attribute. Okay, so, and for each of the attributes that I want to get, I will modify my getter. So the naming convention is that, for instance, I want this one to get the color for me, so I can say get color, right? And then I'll call get color here, right? So now, and whenever I call this get color, I get the value of this protected color. I'm not writing this color. I'm not calling car1 dot color, like underscore color, the way we did it here, right? So I'm just using this function, and the function is returning it. Now, it's worthy of note that you can do anything you want to do before you return the value of the color. You can choose to format it, you can choose to strip it, you can choose to check if it is a string, or check if it is a boolean, or check for whatever data type, or check for whatever condition you want to check. Write your ifs and else's, and then by the time you're satisfied that the value of the color that was entered at the point of instantiation is what you expect, then you now return it as the color. or you can throw error. So it is just a normal function that does what it does, but as far as it is helping you to access a protected or a private class attribute, you can look at it as a getter or a setter function. Okay, so now we already have a getter function here, and I am going to also create a setter function. So, and this time around, I'm going to define another function, and I will call it set instead of get, right? So instead of get color, I'm going to say set color. So you remember that we try to assign the value of number of whales to reassign it. So like now I can say I want to reassign color, and I want to reassign it to green, right? So this is not going to work. But with this setter function, we can reassign it whenever we call this setter function. So I'm going to close this bracket, and I'm going to pass in self, or if the attribute that you want to modify is the class attribute, you can pass in class. And you remember to use the class method decorator. That is if you want to access a class attribute. Now, but this particular attribute, which is color, is an instant attribute. So, and what else do we want to pass in here? Well, maybe color. Now, remember that this color that I have here has nothing to do with all of these variables that are up here. So the color that I have here is the name that I'm giving the parameter that will be passed when this set color is called. So I am going to write my colon, and I am going to write a simple logic that will reassign whatever value of color that I had originally, right? So I am going to say that self.color, so that is this value now, will now become color. So, and this time, this color is this one that will be passed in when this particular function is called. So now, for now, I'm going to run this without reassigning, without using this function. So we can see that the color here is ash. So, and this getter function is getting color, and it is returning self.color. So I am going to print this. Okay, we are having this because we are still trying to access this. So I'm going to delete it. So now I'm going to clear the terminal, and I'm going to print this again. So the color is still ash, right? So this color that we are trying to reassign to green is no is still not, is not working yet. So but if I now use this setter function, so I'm now saying car1 dot set color, and I will pass in the value of green, and I'm going to run this again because here we are still getting color. So now our color has been changed to green, right? So this particular print statement is coming from here, and this is because the assignment has not happened before that program, that line of code ran. All right, so and if I run this again, we have just green. So I hope you understand how to use the setters and the getter. Now, this is a general way of doing this, and this is also obtainable in some other programming languages. But in Python, Python has a distinct way of using getters and setters. So now, if you want to get a variable or a parameter, and that parameter is private or protected, what you can do is to set a getter. But in Python, the proper way to set a getter is to use a decorator called the property decorator. So I'm going to write it, a property, and now this has become a decorator. So, and the convention is that you set that decorator to the name of the attributes that you're going to use it for. So I'm going to change this to color now, right? And this particular function is now returning only color. So if I decide to now print self.color, so and I've changed this now to self.color, so you can see now that this color is not coming out as a function, it's coming out as a variable, unlike this function here. So if I call this set color now, so just look at this, you see the color is different. So but now I'm trying to access this other method here, which is also a method but is a property method. So you see color is coming out as a variable, right? So you see all the colors of the variable, and if I print this, well, the value of color is already returned in this function, so we are going to have the value of our color, right? So now how do we create a setter the proper way? Okay, so the way to create a setter is to write the setter decorator, but you are going to attach it to the name of the variable that you are setting it to. Okay, so we are going to use this color dot setter, sorry, right? And this will now be able to set that color. So you can see that set color is no longer working. So if I say that self dot color again, and I say that is now equal to yellow, right? So, and I print this. So now color has been modified. So right now, this thing is now working as though they are normal variables or normal attributes. Okay, so this color that I called here is for this, and the color that I called here is for the property decorator, right? But somebody that is outside of this program would not know. Okay, so this is a basic way to practice encapsulation in your program, so that people that are not that do not have access to your source code will not be able to have access to your attributes, or people that even have access to your source code will not accidentally modify the values of these attributes in a way that you do not approve of. Okay, so I hope you understood this. So you can play around with this, you can create your own method, and you can create your own class, and you can define your own attributes, both private attributes and protected attributes. So this particular illustration that we made, we used instant attributes. So, and remember that number of wheels is a class attribute. So if you want to modify that class attribute too, what you can do is to change this to class, and instead of here that you have self, you have class dot that, and you pass in whatever you want to pass in here, and you say that you want it to be class dot number of wheels, and you have number of wheels, and you set it to the value that is coming in. So it basically works the same way either ways. So you can just create your own class, and maybe probably check for conditions before you reassign them. All right. So this is the summary of encapsulation in object-oriented programming in Python. So thank you so much for watching this video, and see you in the next one.